Okay, so it says that we're live already. And let's wait for a couple of minutes and then start.
Sure.
Yeah,
And I'll be right back.
sure. We can see one viewer already in the stream. Welcome. We are waiting for other people to join. Yes, the number is increasing. Welcome, everyone. We will be starting our session in a bit. Oh, we have a comment already. Simon Shoaib says hello. Hello, Simon. Welcome to the session. We are waiting for other people to join, and we will immediately start when Steve is here, our guest of honor.
Guest of honor. Wow. Okay, here I come in. Hello, Nazif. Hello, Riz.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Okay, let's do this.
So yeah, yes, I can see people joining, and I can see a lot of people has joined already. So let's start our session for today. Welcome, everyone. This is the very first episode of The Sprint. The Sprint is a live conversation by maestros from all around the world, where we will be talking about tech and other things that are trendy, that are amazing, and that are awesome. Today's episode is named How to Build an Awesome Tech Brand. And to begin the show, I want to introduce our guests today. As our special guest, we have Hasnaeen Rizvi Rahman, the founder and CEO of Astha IT, a top software development company of Bangladesh. He's a serial entrepreneur, a business strategist, and a software engineer. He has also founded other ventures in the US and in Bangladesh. After his BSc in computer science from North South University, Hasnaeen Rizvi Rahman enrolled in master's program at Chalmers University of Technology in interactive design, which he eventually dropped out from to launch his life-changing successful journey through entrepreneurship. How amazing is that? Rizvi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Nazif, for the kind words and the warm welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's actually our pleasure that you're here with your time, with your valuable time. And now let me introduce you to the guest of honor of this episode, Steve Su, the chairman of ID8, a Hawaii-based not-for-profit organization which specializes in creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship programs. He is also the CEO of SAS Ventures, a software development and software venture firm. His career includes 25 years as a storyteller, a conceptualist, a startup person, a venturer, a social venturer in entertainment, hospitality, food service, retail, product, and software. Steve holds a BA in design from UCLA and a JD from UC Berkeley. That is a fantastic academic turn. And we are so glad to have you with us, Steve. It's an honor, and I cannot share with words how glad we are, how delighted we are to have you here. And I'm pretty sure all of the audience, all the people, they are actually enjoying and very excited to see you, to hear you, to learn from you. Thank you, Steve, for being with us.
Happy to join
So
you
how-
guys.
Thank you so much. How are you doing, Steve? First of all,
Doing good. It's early in the morning. It's I live in
Yeah.
Hawaii, so it's about 6 o'clock in the morning for me.
oh wow, good morning, Steve.
Get
It's
up
10
early,
a.m.
get
here.
it done. That's the entrepreneurial way.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So should we begin? Should we begin with a question that I have that I'm really curious about? I really wanted to ask Steve for a long time. So, Steve, you have a Doctor of Law from a very highly ranked university, and you started your academic career in design as well, the BA in design. So, After all these things, what made you pursue your career in software and entrepreneurship instead?
Well, I wasn't that good at the law. You do the things that you're great at, and we can't all be great at everything. I have always regarded myself as the designer first. I've always been very visually oriented. My pride and joy right now is I'm making a movie. So these are things that are very interesting to me, and I follow my passion through life. But you follow your passions, and you're more likely to have success. I will say that I backdoored my way into software only because I'd had some number of years in the field of architecture. And I realized at one point that it was easier to automate myself in an industry that's similar, namely software. When you design software, I understand Agile, but I will tell you that I'm more of a believer in planning first and then building afterwards. And so in the construction industry, architecture and construction industry, there's an old adage is measure twice, cut once. And if you don't do this in software, you end up with what we call spaghetti code. So ultimately, significantly detailed planning is key. So when I was in architecture industry, I had spent so many years in it and was so well known in my area in California that I was asked by a company called Autodesk to help them create software. And so Autodesk is the company that publishes AutoCAD. And so literally inside of AutoCAD, it's my hand drawing. So this is the portion that they wanted to capture from me was how do you create a great conceptual looking drawing, something that's hand hewn. And so we literally digitized my drawing method into Autodesk products over the course of about 2 years. And along about the way, I realized that it's far easier to build software than to build architecture because you can start building right away. There's no height limits, there's no building permits, there's no inspectors to the same degree as in architecture. Of course, we do have QA and we have a great deal of testing, but it's really quite unfettered. And certainly with respect to the height limit, there's no height limit to software. So that really engaged me in the industry, and it really is the same process of designing something and building something. And sometimes you remodel things and you go back and refactor things. The industries have different terminology, but it's really quite the same process of design. And in fact, design thinking as a terminology came from literally the charrette industry in France, which was the way architecture was always first conceived. So this business that we know as agile and design thinking and lead startup, all these things are tried and true principles that have always been in design. I just happened to find my way from kind of an old traditional version of design into a new version of design, which is software.
That is so amazing and interesting to hear. It actually makes sense. I mean, you have architecture in softwares as well, so you might have connected those two, and it worked for you. So my second question will be for Rizvi Bhai. So Rizvi Bhai, you too have a glorious academic history. Over the years of your student life, you have maintained outstanding grades, but eventually left a globally sought after master's program. So this is a huge step to take, actually. There's a huge risk as well. So what motivated you to pursue entrepreneurship instead of the academic glory that you are pursuing? And how important do you think formal education is for aspiring tech professionals or entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Nazif. I'll keep it really short. You asked me two questions. So the first question is what motivated me. Like Steve said, I just followed my passion. I mean, I was always a programmer, a problem solver by heart. I still love solving problem, mine and other people's. That's what I do. But maybe I wanted to do things my way a little bit with my own creativity and flexibility. That motivated me to go for entrepreneurship. Plus, you asked me whether formal academics or education is helpful in entrepreneurship. Well, I mean, any wisdom, any knowledge is helpful if you can make use of it. So, I actually watched a video of Steve Jobs long ago. He said when he joined his college, he actually used to take the classes that he loved, which were related to typography and design, and dropped all other courses. And long after that, he actually made use of those knowledge when he designed Apple, the first graphical computer, So any knowledge can be leveraged, used. You can add value to it. You can use it to create value in other people's lives. So definitely helpful.
I wonder is Nazif frozen out here, or am I frozen out?
I think we are not. I think Nazif is. Nazif, you there now? Yeah, I can see him blink.
Oh yeah. Hey Riz, so what is that trophy in the background you have there? You're also a great sportsman, I know. You've got the biggest biceps of any software man I know.
Well, so we actually, how do I put it? We arrange company events or game shows,
Uh-huh.
And one of the events was chess tournament, which I won, and that's the trophy for that.
Looks like you won Wimbledon or the Stanley Cup or the what do you call it? The yacht race, the America's Cup.
Nazif, you there?
Nazif
He's back. Yep.
Yeah, I'm extremely sorry. I don't know. Probably it's the internet issue. I don't know. I was just lost for a moment.
No,
hey,
no
that's
problem.
the way podcast is supposed to be. It's supposed to be casual, just conversational. So
yeah. And
so the thing is that I'm back.
No life is perfect without technical difficulties,
Absolutely.
You have to aspire for better always. Let's rewrite this StreamYard thing, Riz. Let's go. Build our own version.
Maybe, yeah, who knows? So that's it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, Riz.
I see a question.
Words. Yeah. So getting back to you, Steve. Exactly. So Steve, what was the first tech brand that you actually created? Did you have a mantra, as you were saying that you're always the person to plan first and then go for it? So did you have a mantra?
A mantra?
For creating your first brand? Yeah. Or a formula, a plan?
Oh God, I don't know. I always have a mantra for everything. For the first tech product I ever built.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh God. Well, the first tech product we ever built was a product called Biz Gym, and it was like a business gymnasium, a place to get strong,
Mm-hmm.
win big. So in the entrepreneur world, you really have to be very fast. You have to be nimble. You have to be strong. You have to know what you want. It's very difficult to outperform others that are incumbents in any space already. So we, like everyone else, had competition against us in our first application that was already in the market. And so going up against them, we basically had to find a more nimble way to break the paradigm of how do you do a business plan. And in that era, which was about 15 years ago, this is very early SaaS days. But we really felt that the business planning process was broken. It's too difficult. Nobody wants to write a 60-page document. How are you going to get strong if it takes you too long to work out? How are you going to be nimble if you can't surgically change any part of your concept? Because an entrepreneurial concept is 1,001 ideas all meshed into one. So ultimately, what you're doing in business is you're trying to perfect your algorithm. You have to, change variables from time to time and test them. You do A and B scenario testing just like you would do in software development. So ultimately, I didn't think a language-based business plan was a great way to go. And so we wrote a very segmented, basically a big form. But what's interesting about the form was that certain areas would copy forward into others. So we'd have fields that would address from, like say the name or the slogan would address forward into other places. And we would literally make reports in this software that you could see if you were planning the name of your company, it would show up on a graphic as the storefront of your shop or the front page of your website. So you could see your story in context, and you could likewise edit in place. So it was kind of an idea of WYSIWYG for business planning. That had its day. It was successful, but there was one piece inside of that software. It was a very simple financial modeler. So one of the issues for gaining funding for startups is, how do you prove that you're worthy of the millions of dollars you need to do something you've never done before? And so we had a very simple financial modeler that was not spreadsheet based, but was more assumptions panel based, more wizard based. And we were able to get children down to elementary school in our country to be able to do 5-year financials to project out hockey sticks of success on their lemonade stands, for example. And that one product was interesting. As we tracked the use of it, we found that the modeler for the finance was being used more and more over time, to the point where we decided to break that out into its own separate application. And that application today is called SumoSum, SUMOSUM.com. And we're very proud to be bringing this particular product to the market, because I think it really, the bottom line of business is a number. So why wouldn't you start with the numbers, and why wouldn't you iterate your idea by the numbers? So I think we have a groundbreaking way to actually get to a simpler way, even beyond decks, which was, of course, deck was a replacement to business plan. So you went from language-based business plan to visually oriented deck or slideshow, and now to numbers. But ultimately, start with the numbers. And it turns out to be, if you use SumoSum, I think the very best way, the most efficient way, the most nimble way, and certainly the strongest way that would convince any shark on Shark Tank that you know your numbers. And this is what we constantly hear on those type of shows, is it's a guy like Mark Cuban railing on somebody saying, hey, you don't know your numbers. What's the matter with you? Don't come on my show until you know your numbers. Well, here's a way to know your numbers. So we listen to the market all the time, but there's other times where you as an entrepreneur have to march to your own beat. And Riz knows this very well. There are times where we're really sticking our neck out far, because we are, by definition, here to break paradigm. And breaking paradigm is very difficult, because people have their own vested interest in paradigm, but they also are not familiar with what you might want them to do. So early adoption is very, very key. I want to throw it back to you, Riz, on that point, because I know you've started a bunch of these with me as well as on your own.
Yep.
Nazif is away from us, so you and I are just going to have this conversation and just keep going, okay? But in your estimation, like, how many times have you broken paradigm, and how hard has that been to convince people?
Absolutely. While Nazif's gone, I can ask you a question that I have. I mean, I'm sure many people would want to know the answer of. So you have been involved in multiple tech ventures and tech companies, and today's show is about branding or brand development. So what are the most important things, in your opinion, that you need to do in branding a tech company?
Yeah, sure. Well, in branding a tech company, the word branding has to be defined, first of all. Branding as a term is very misunderstood, because people use it very lightly and very figuratively. But to me, when I define a brand, I always add a word to it, and that word is story. So if somebody says, I want you to help me with my brand, I'll say, okay, I'll help you with your brand story. And I don't use the word story lightly. I use it as a metaphor, and as an acid test to define if you're going down the right path, if you're doing the right skills, if you're affecting the right parts of your business in a deep enough manner that matters. So when I say story, I'm literally saying, who are the actors on your stage? What is their backstory? What are their motivations? What do they care about? Audience are so good today at cutting through the bull. They know whether you're a good person or you're a bad person. They know whether you believe in Allah by the things you say. They know whether you are in it for the customer, you're customer centric, or you're in it for yourself, just for money. So this is why so many businesses, for example, they donate to nonprofits, and they go out and they do, volunteer activities, and these type of activities show that you have good character. People want to work with people with good character, and that's all part of your story. So with respect to the passion that you have for your business, and this is more on a, typical uh, value added basis, is they want to know you're passionate, that you have skills, that you've spent the time in your life to develop um, utilities and value for your end customer. And all of that kind of gets wrapped up into the story. But then if you think about the story of your business as a pyramid, there's always like, the cornerstones of your pyramid. In this particular story for Riz and Steve, maybe, software developers are one of our cornerstones is coding. Another story is user interface design. Another story is we know a lot about financial, therefore we're very good at fintech products. So, there's three cornerstones right there. Perhaps there's a fourth cornerstone that's we're about the community, or we're about God. So those cornerstones ultimately build up in the layers of the strata of your pyramid to the point where you get to the very tip. And that tip is going to be what most people refer to as the brand, meaning your logo or your name. So, just below that, maybe you have a slogan or you have a tagline, which is a little bit more word space to describe your enterprise. But when you get to the very top of the eye of the pyramid, it has to be so well chosen of a name and a logo. And they're kind of one and the same, because a logo is a visual symbol of the name. But the name is the most literal way to describe the story of your business. So if you can reduce your story down to one word, in our country, we had a theme park designer named Walt Disney, and Disneyland, and Walt Disney's theme park company was dubbed Imagineering. So you think about that word is actually two words in one: imagination plus engineering.
Engineering,
And they go against type. They're not words that typically work well together, but it shows differentiation. It shows uniqueness. So he had a very strong philosophy about engineering and story go together to create the best stories. It's really pretty ingenious word. And of course, when you own a word, you can own it. And then you get off to the races. Then you're designing things with Cinderella's castle as your logo, and you've got the stars flying over. And there's multiple ways to describe a word graphically. The best names, though, they inherently lend themselves to a logo, a very simple symbolic representation. The simpler simple, the better, because you're more controlling the market. So this idea of branding, it goes back to your basic essential skills. Do you know yourself? Do you know your company? Are you able to articulate, meaning use words to describe your company? In software, website development, search engine optimization is all about choosing the exact right word to be found on the internet. So the better you are at words, the better you are going to be found, the better you're going to be able to describe your business to others, the better that your public is going to be able to remember your story and pass it on. So remembering, being memorable and passing it on, being able to easily pass it on, meaning it's not a super long URL, those type of things.
Right.
It's an intuitive word. It's a word that works across cultures. It's a word that you don't have to be an English major to understand what it is. It works anywhere in the world. These are the hallmarks of great brands. And, then certainly, of course, visuals work into play, because they're not segregated from a great word. By the way, if you're building an app, anybody that's on this call, I highly urge you to really strive hard for that great URL, and ideally a .com, because it really becomes your IP for an app. We don't take the time to patent software, none of that. So there's too many workarounds, so it's not worth the time. But what is worth the time is choosing the most intuitive access point to the area that you're farming. So,
Yep.
if you build an app, it's like you spend a ton of time doing code. Don't settle for a second-rate word as the name site. Choose the very, very, very best. And we've been very lucky. Like I was describing Sumo some earlier, we took that name a year and a half ago for nominal. It was like $12. We didn't have to buy it from anybody. We've always been able to buy great names. Our nonprofit we renamed this year or last year, 2022, and I bought ID8.org nominal. That's pretty dope. So they are there. They're not one in a million. They're using your ingenuity, or they're using your creative word capacity to find metaphors and new ways of defining a market in ways that people haven't thought of defining it before. That's the art of branding.
Awesome. I'd like to add something to you, Steve. So for me, I mean, brand is like the identity of anything. It can be a person, it can be an organization, and it works like a magnet, it draws people towards it. So if the brand is strong, it sells automatically. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to go to people by people, door to door, to reach out. People will be drawn to you automatically. So yeah, I mean it's very important in any business, I believe. So thank you for your answer, Steve. And I see Nazif is back.
I completely agree. You know what, Nazi, we should handle some of these questions here. How to grow a business in Bangladesh, what skills are most important to learn. Riz should take that one.
Exactly. That's actually a very, very great question. We will actually go in towards that direction, of course. And thank you so much for having me back. I was having some connectivity issues, and I'm pretty sure, and I believe that it won't occur again. I really beg your pardon for that. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for continuing this. I will go to Riz with the next questions, but before that, I want to attend a few audience who is watching, who are there with us. I'll take questions from them a little later, so hang on
Okay.
there, guys. But I just want to wave hello to Simon. Onuk Kantikor says hi, hi. Thank you for being here. I hope you're enjoying this. Mehdi Hassan says it's a good start. Thank you so much. This is our first episode. We promise to go on with this. And Musina said excited to learn a lot. Thank you so much. Amirul Islam said, I have used AutoCAD in university, if I'm not mistaken. That's great. That's great. So a lot of people are appreciating. And Simon Mezabim says, very impressive. Thank you so much. It's impressive to see you as well joining with us. Osama bin Alma says, always great to see Steve. That's exactly what we all
my
feel.
man.
Our man, right? Yeah.
So yeah, now comments will be coming. I will be attending them after a few time as well for another time. So let's go to Riz with the next question of ours, which actually says, Riz, this is a very interesting question. I'm pretty sure you have a lot to say about this. You have worked closely with a lot of people from a lot of different parts of the world. How would you say branding practices differs in the US from our country or from different countries?
Thank you, Nazif. Yeah, pretty interesting question indeed. So I think the difference lies in the maturity of these two industries. So the tech industry of the United States is way mature than what we have now in Bangladesh, which is pretty, well, much younger industry, So in the US, what I have experienced in my 15 years of working with them is they're very KPI driven, very data driven, and they always measure metrics, return on investments, how the campaigns are doing, how we are spending money in which area to develop the brand, to grow the brand, and they all decide further based on this data. On the other hand, over this part of the world, things are still young and learning, and we're growing. So we are not very organized in doing this stuff. I mean, we are doing branding and we are doing great work in brand developments, but it's still more emotion driven and impulse driven. We just go for it. We just do it. Maybe we don't follow up well. In fact, if I may say in this live, I have often boosted or promoted social posts, and I was pretty happy seeing the result that it has like 5,000 likes or whatever, but I have never checked the data behind it, like which people of which countries visited it more, or who made the clicks or who commented. I never followed up. So this is the perfect difference between two industries. But with time, we are learning and growing, and things are shaping up nicely.
Riz, one area that you know this very well, we always look at is how many people are viewing on desktop versus pad versus mobile.
Right.
And that one metric alone greatly informs the type of graphics and the layouts. I mean, obviously any website, for example, would be responsive design, but still you would bias towards one or the other based on the amount of content that any screen can hold and things like that. So I think you're right, Riz, that the whole thing with numerics and data is very key. Anybody from any part of the world can use those principles. It's really just listening and then responding in a way that it really fulfills what your audience is demanding.
Absolutely. Totally.
Absolutely, Steve. So my next question is for Steve, which actually is related to this one. So Riz, the thing that Riz said about the US companies, US tech companies, that they're data driven, they're KPI driven. Do you actually agree with that? What is your take on the thing that how is actually branding done in the US? Does US follow a specific style which is different than the other parts of the world? Or do you have a specific style that you have grown in all these years of practicing entrepreneurship and everything? We would definitely love to know that.
Yeah, there are country styles for sure. For example, we do a fair amount of work with Japanese companies, and in almost any Asian country that goes on like the Vietnam side up is very much into pastel colors. They don't like super strong dark colors. They don't like the sort of the black look and the black site look. It's very scary to them. So there are sort of acceptable norms in specific countries. And I would say color is one of the most strong, obvious norms. I tend to design for US country extremely strong colors. I want high key contrast because this is a country of very significant social media following now. It's like 60% of our country gets all of its news by social media now. So in order to stand out in that spectrum, you have to basically be clickbait, both in terms of the headlines you put up and the type of content you put up. You almost need to be videographic now, not just still.
Mm-hmm.
And so along with that, you start to see every meme is getting flashier. It's both more contrast, harder hitting colors. Nothing is apologetic. Everything is extremely aggressive. And I don't know that's the best for everybody, but if you want to be seen, that's your first order of business is you have to be seen. And there may be ways you can cut a meme, like we use Canva a lot. It's easy to drive. It's an easier version than Illustrator or Photoshop for most people. And it's got a lot of built-in templates that are specifically engineered in a way to really flashy and, have those big flashes of lights or big color changes or really aggressive text that just comes in on you. So all of these things are things that they are cultural to some degree, but I think generally, who invented TikTok? The Chinese. And the Chinese you would not expect to be very much in your face, but they're very much like this now, right? And this, in fact, this is a thing that we always did in comic book design. It's called foregrounding, and so when you have something close to you, the camera's really big, that looks way stronger than that. So all of these tools, whether it's the subject matter, how you frame it, how you colorize it, how you work text into it, these things all count. And there are certain things that go across cultures, but there are certainly differences without question.
Absolutely, Steve. Oh, that was so insightful. It actually interests me a lot, things of this sort. And so, yeah. So, Acha, this is a question for both of you. So, I would want to ask, so anyone can take the lead. It can be Riz and Steve, both of you. So, um, there are some specific things that actually matter to some extent in different countries, different parts of the world, but those are actually commonly used to brand eventually. So, compound question. So, the difference between branding strategies for tech companies and non-tech companies, is it very important a thing to understand, first of all? And please, would you both tell us, the audience definitely wants to know, I'm pretty sure, that what is the role of vehicles like social media or traditional marketing approach in actually branding your tech company?
Go for it, Riz.
Yeah, I can take it first. Steve, you can elaborate. So, well, the science behind brand development is universal. I mean, it's more or less the same for every industry or every vertical. I mean, of course, the actual outcome might be different depending on the business and the nature of the business, but the process to build it and the things that govern it are all well defined. These are textbooks, you know. So, for example, how do you build a brand? You have to make the identity visible to the audience. So you do things in public, like you have a good logo, flashy color, very well designed websites. You know, you do PR, you do social media marketing, you do traditional marketing, content marketing, which plays a very strong play in brand development. These are all the same. How do you write the content for your brand would differ from industry to industry, but the
Yeah.
steps are all the same. That's my idea. By the way, I'm not a branding guru, but as a technologist, I think this is I believe, you know. So Steve can elaborate more.
What he said, Riz, you are a branding guru. You're right. Yeah, I mean, there's no difference. You build a brand the same way in any industry. I would say that the cautionary tale here is that many people in specific industry think that there's supposed to be an industry style. Like I remember when Photoshop first came out with a feature where you could superimpose two ellipses and then subtract one from the other. And all of a sudden, every tech firm had an orbital planet, round circle planet on a swoosh. So there was like their version of the Nike swoosh, and everybody was out in space becoming the next Elon Musk, even before Elon Musk was known. But they all looked like Me Too's, and they're not in the sex Me Too, version, but in the like, I'm just the copycat of yet another tech company. And so ultimately, while it looked cool, it didn't have any differentiation for most companies. There was Planet everything in that era. And so it's like, okay, it's just not enough to be a planet. Red Planet software, green Planet software, little Planet software, it didn't matter, right? So ultimately, you have to find your own story, no matter what industry you're in. And you have to find a way to express it in a unique fashion, because that's what makes you memorable. That's what makes you something that gives you probably word space to find a short word that is different, to find that really unique underpinning of the story. So the second half of your question, Nazif, was related to what role does social media play? And certainly social media is one of the key ways people will ever find out about your business now. But the thing about social media that is cautionary is that it's not inexpensive to make a hit in social media if you want to go really wide. If you're going to be fairly narrow, then it's pretty efficient. So for example, if you have the type of business that, say you're a business coach and you only need 10 good customers, then social media is actually a pretty good medium for you, pretty cost effective, because you're only looking for probably 10 people that are friends and family and that are willing to pay you to sit and have a conversation with them once a week or once a month or whatever your frequency is as a coach. So social media becomes really easy. If you're doing social media as a retailer, though, it's a lot more difficult to be seen, and it's a lot more costly, and it's something that literally becomes an arms race against your competition. So it's not free. Social media influencers cost money, growth hackers cost money, and while you may be able to build up some followership, the question becomes, what is that followership worth? How does that convert to paying customers? Does it actually convert to paying customers, or is it just a vanity number? So only the bottom line will tell you. But I will say that what is kind of seen as an asset today could evaporate very quickly also, because 10,000, 20,000 followers on a company channel, may not be very relevant to sales, but at the same time, if people aren't looking at that in the future, like you keep putting up static posts and everybody's moved on to stories or reels and video, and they're on a completely separate platform, they're like on TikTok and nobody's on Facebook anymore. You have to consider that. And, at the same time, every channel has its own type of followers. So if you're a business coach, probably LinkedIn or Facebook are fine. But if you're in retail, probably Instagram or TikTok are more of your vein. So these things are not static. They're not necessarily assets in stone that you can count on from year to year. I'm not arguing for traditional advertising, which has its own set of issues, but you still have to, beyond creating a story, you have to promote your story. You have to put it in a place where people will view it. And that's a really hard thing to do increasingly in this age of tremendous noise on the internet.
Absolutely, Steve. Yeah. So the next question is exactly the question that you talked about a few moments ago. That is, for example, a person in this country, Bangladesh, or a person in the US. This is a question for both of you, actually. So you can take turns to answer them. So if a person wants to open a tech brand or create a tech brand right now, what would be your advice? What to prioritize first? What to not do? What mistakes can they actually lead into but should not do, and what to do first, what not to do, what things should they have in the mind, and how to be future proof, etc. So what will be your advice?
So if you're building a tech brand, and reiterating the quick words of advice, obviously find the story, find the right word. Related to that is also trademark. So if you choose a word, you want to make sure that you can actually own the word. And in our country, we have what's called federal trademark. And that's where you go to the government in the United States, or there's governments all around the world that file trademarks for you. One of the great acid tests to determine whether you have word space to own as IP, as intellectual property, is in fact whether there's a .com available. This is one of the reasons why I always argue for a .com, is you're less likely to infringe on somebody else's word mark if the .com is available. Because if they owned it, they would have taken the .com. It's the most intuitive. If you take a .io or something, then somebody might own the .com, and it might be a similar business, and then they're going to come and serve with their lawyers a cease and desist and make you change your name, or even take the money that you made. They can do what's called disgorging your profits. So ultimately, I think that the .com is always the safest way to go, short of not being able to get the .com and nobody else, maybe somebody's parked it and they're actually using it. Then you can do trademark searches to determine whether anybody's in your space, and then you can take the word. In some cases, if you're smaller, like say you're working just within one region and nobody else is using that name in your region, they haven't sold product in that area, then you can take more of a localized version of a mark. In the United States, you can take a state version, for example. My state's Hawaii, so I might be able to take a name just for this state if nobody had sold product in the state and under that name. So I think that that's kind of the main thing, is that you know that there's IP space available, because again, you don't want to be caught infringing on somebody else's space and have to start from square one.
Riz, would you like to add something to it in the context of Bangladesh?
Well, actually, Steve covered everything. I mean, I was about to add a few, then I just figured out that he said it. So let's move to the next topic then.
That is actually fantastic.
He just nailed it, yeah.
By the way, Nazim, so you asked the question of my, educational background. So you just heard the other side of my education. And one thing that I've discovered in branding is the connective tissue between business strategy and marketing communications. Normally, marketing communications is something that design people govern. And so that's why I think you get this kind of perception that branding is a marketing discipline only. But to be frank, there are companies that are branding companies that never do design. They only do business strategy. They actually deliver their product in terms of white papers. So you can see both ends of the spectrum there. But in the end analysis, branding has to connect the dots of the story. The story is written by the authors of the story are at the strategy level. They are the CEOs and the presidents of the companies. They're the board. But that has to be a story that's performed by everyone downstream of that, including the designers and the service representatives, the salespeople, and all of that.
Absolutely, Steve. I agree with you. As a student of marketing, I did my bachelor's in marketing. So we were taught that there's strategic marketing and there's tactical marketing, and branding actually falls under the strategic part. So so definitely I believe so. I don't have personal experiences with making a brand, but I'm connecting the dots in my head, what you said with what I.
And the strategy actually goes, the strategy goes beyond marketing too. So like if you're in school, they say, oh, branding is part of marketing strategy. It's actually branding is part of corporate strategy or entity strategy. It's not, marketing is one facet of corporate strategy. You've got supply chain, you've got operations. I mean, there's many things that create the story of a company. You might have a company that's based on one specific commodity, like say De Beers Diamonds controls the production of diamonds worldwide, right? So that company is branding to that fact. And so marketing is only one part of that, but it actually doesn't drive the brand. The brand is driven by supply chain. So you have to think about it from the highest level of strategy. And marketing is only literally about halfway down, right?
Absolutely, Steve. So if Riz doesn't have anything to add to it, can we actually take a few questions from the audiences? I can see there are actually a number of questions. Yeah, absolutely. So the first question that I have is from Shahriar Islam. Okay, it's a situational question. He says, suppose I have a great product in mind, but I do not have the business mentality or qualities that are needed. I know my numbers, but I don't know people or do not have that many connections. So will going into an entrepreneurship be the right choice for me in these circumstances?
Find a partner. Find. So it sounds like you're looking for an evangelist, and there's always like the extrovert that is really good at spouting it. Like learning to be an extrovert is a very difficult thing, but every team needs a product manager, designer, an evangelist, a salesperson. Oftentimes the evangelist and salesperson end up being the same person, only because the skill sets are relatively the same. So you can break it up any way you want. But the goal is to get a holistic team. And some people are able to cover only certain parts of that wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I totally second you, Steve. I mean, if someone does have a product idea and wants to be the entrepreneur, you know. But still thinks that he is not business savvy or a bit introvert, then just have a partner, have the right partner. If you have the budget or funding, hire someone qualified. That might help. I mean, there are actually many great entrepreneurs who were not very extrovert, who were actually shy, and who worked behind the scene more, but still were successful. So it's all about having and setting up a great team. Entrepreneurship and success, well, it mostly depends on a great team.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, like the two Steves, Jobs and Wozniak. One was an extrovert, one was an introvert. One was an inventor, right? One was an
Yeah,
executive. The
right, right.
Disneys, Walt Disney had Roy Disney behind him. Nobody ever knew about Roy. Roy kept that place afloat. Walt Disney would have bankrupted Disney 10 times over. So nobody can be all things. You don't want to be all things to the world. You want to find the right team and partner with people that make you stronger. Surround yourself by people that are better than you. You've heard that before, but it's not just people below you on your totem pole. It's everybody, the people above you, on the side of you. You go out and get money. You look for smart money. Smart money means that somebody's giving you funding, but they also can create relationships. That's probably the bigger value add for venture capital firms is they literally can hook you up and make the market for you because they have a vested interest in you. They're not going to put $5 or $10 million behind you and let you die. They're going to elevate you. So that's the kind of money you want behind you. They're above you, but they're fulfilling that fixing of the wheel that you don't have all the spokes in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another very, very interesting question from Russell Khan. So the question goes like this. So what actually encourages you to work with a Bangladeshi service provider or a company? So what branding of Bangladesh actually hooks you to work with Bangladeshi people?
Without
Interesting.
question, without question, the food. I don't know why, but everybody does this in Bangladesh, and I'm good at it. I have a very rubber neck. But no, seriously, I really enjoy working with Bengali because in the United States, every coder has their side hustle.
Mhm.
They're focused on some entrepreneurial thing. They're trying to develop themselves out of their garage or off their kitchen table. And they don't really have me or my client at heart. They're not
Right.
loyal. And that's one of the issues with the United States is there's just people are very disloyal. They're very individualistic. They're bred to be individualistic, which is good in the invention side, but not so good in the loyalty side. And obviously, if you don't have loyalty, you don't have continuity of engineering teams, you cannot follow through a product. And so, in my estimation, working with Riz for almost a decade now, number one, I always find he always gets everything done. He's always like right on it. Every person on the team is always right on it. And they're just, Bengalis are very responsible people. They're very nice people. They are very loyal people. One thing I know about Bengalis is they never say no. They'll say, okay, I'll think about it. And that really means no. And so I learned, there are cultural differences and we have stopgaps.
Sometimes it's problematic, Steve.
Well, it's only problematic if I don't realize, like, right, what are the limits? And so over time, I have learned what are the danger signs, how if I'm pushing things too far. It's a kind of a dance. But honestly, I prefer to dance with people in Bangladesh more than coders in the United States. And I think that ultimately every country has its place in the world. Every place has a reason to be the best in their sector of any given economy. So this is my choice, and I think it's an ideal situation. Bangladesh wants to do business with the United States because obviously there's a lot of software built here, and many still regard it as a front runner. It's probably, like China's a front runner certainly, but it's a little bit more predatory. There's other issues. Every dog has its fleas. But I would say that you can look anywhere in the world and find very good people to work with. I like where we're at, and it's been really fun.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Steve. We feel really proud. And I cannot agree more with the point that we do struggle to say no very often. So, yeah. So I have another question, the last one from the audiences probably. Yeah. And this is a big question actually, but a very interesting one. It's from Iradat Munshi. It's directed towards Steve directly. So he says, branding and commodity sales from the 90s has shifted heavily towards online from print, where advertisements were marked as advertisement. Most advertising is currently done online with targeted ad designs using behavioral data, where 80 to 90% of the budget is allocated to Facebook, Google, TikTok, and Twitter. From a moral point of view, how easy is it to accept we are reading news fed through to us by AI, where original journalism is fading away?
Wow.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. But let's take the advertising to start with. I'm a big believer that advertising is informational. So I like the idea that they have my data and they're able to send me ads that are relevant to me, because if I happen to be in the market for a Tesla, I say something on social, and then all of a sudden I get a crap ton of messages about Teslas. Okay, I'm interested at that moment. Likewise, like 6 months later after I bought a car, then okay, maybe I'm out of the market and I cease to say that, and I don't want those ads served to me, and they know that because they're not going to make money off of that sale. So I think there are great conveniences to the way social does. I'm not one that's that bent out of shape that they're taking my personal data and all of those things. Maybe at some point when they blackmail me or something, then it's a different story. But I think generally that the services are really about service and functionality. The news thing is a little bit different, because the news cycle, it's an extremely dangerous situation, the echo chambers of the news. And, this is where people in partisan politics, if you hear the same thing that you think and you don't hear other people's opinions or perspectives, then it becomes dangerous. So you say, our side is right, your side is wrong. That's different than advertising, which is like, here's information on our product. In our country, there's a number of TV shows that are made on this very point, and they're very typically political dramas, and they're typically showing how in the Trump era, we've become extremely polarized. And, so there's conservatives and there's progressives, and they only hear their own side, and they're getting further and further away from each other because humans have, for some reason, a need to vilify other humans. We're a warring being, unfortunately, and the history of the world is war. And you know what? We haven't seen our last war in the world. There will always be wars. I mean, why do we watch professional sports in our country? Any football, soccer game, cricket, all of those things are wars. They're the replacement for war. We root for our team. The other guys are bad. And we reinforce that in so many ways in all global society. It's actually a pretty dangerous thing. So now that you have these echo chambers that are feeding content that the social media companies think is relevant to you, because that's what you're going to click, right? It's a clickbait thing. Then it becomes very dangerous. And of course, the clickbait that's competing against its own clickbait in its own area, say if you're progressive and you get clickbait that's all progressive, then the most furthest out progressive clickbait is the thing you're going to look at. very dangerous because now your mentality starts going further and further out. So I think that that's the real big issue. And in our country, we have this thing called the First Amendment, which is free speech. And so the social media channels claim free speech. They, and they're not moderating the speech, but maybe they should be. It's a huge debate in this country. What's hateful, what's not. If you say something is against what you believe, then it's automatically hateful. This is why Twitter was recently bought out and reconfigured, and everybody gets fired because of this. So I don't know what the solution to that is. Maybe we just have a huge war, or maybe a volcano erupts and we go back to the ice age and all technology dies, and we come back from just a few people left. The world will heal itself. I think that mankind, unfortunately, sounds a little bit pessimistic, but we are probably the greatest parasite that's ever lived on the planet. We kill its environment. We're probably, with technology, accelerating the demise of the world. But at the same time, the world will always self-heal. And probably the cockroaches will take over in the next eon, and we'll all grow back from cockroaches. But mankind isn't that smart. I think our species typifies the saying, a little knowledge is dangerous. And so to take yourself too seriously, to believe that you're the only one in the world that's right, is a very foolish thing to do. It's a very short-sighted thing to do. I think whatever we do, if you say it with a smile on your face and you have a good feeling in your heart for another person, if you're sharing, if you're caring, if you believe in the gods and that they will keep you on the right path, these are things that are more important than making a big business or being the ultra successful entrepreneur. I don't really aspire to that. I like to support the people that I love and I want to be around, and I want to have a joke with them, and I want to have a great conversation, and that's enough. And then I'll leave the planet, because if I can leave the planet better than when I first came, ideal. I'll leave as ashes on the wind, and that's good enough. I don't have to be the story that lasts for all time. I don't have to be a cornerstone of society. Most of us leave without a trace. So why do we stress so much while we're here? Enjoy.
Yep.
Absolutely, Steve.
Can I add just one line to that question? So the last part of the question says, how can we accept that we are reading news fed through us by AI and original journalism is fading away? I would say accept it. Just accept it. This is a brave new world. This is something we cannot do anything about. World is being driven by technology, and with the advance of AI and all these things, I don't see anything changing or going back. This trend will be accelerated with time, and we have to accept it, to be in the game, to be ahead of the game. So we just have to be careful though, but we have to accept it. So that's my point.
Good point, Riz. If you think about this, is journalism in this day and age is pretty old-fashioned. It's a very inefficient way to get content out to the world, to create content and get it out. So AI content isn't necessarily worse. It's really, I think, more of a conglomeration behind what's out there already. It's probably more articulatedly well stated than your average writer today, because writers are underfunded. And, they all used to be a writer on a newspaper had one beat. Now they've got 10 beats. They're not experts over 10 subjects. It's just that they've laid off 10 people and kept one. So if you think about, is AI content bad or not? Not really any worse than any human content, because it's really all based on human content to begin with anyway. And if it's all about the clickbait and stuff that it gains headlines, then it doesn't really matter. I think the opposite end of the pipe is what we should be concentrating on, which is our own personal filters of what's good and what's garbage, of our own ability to acquire
Absolutely.
knowledge from multiple sources, to be vigilant in the kind of content that we are consuming. My brother has always been, my younger brother was always a very conservative person. And then he ended up marrying a liberal person. And it changed his entire, he literally went way off the deep end to become liberal. It wasn't that it made him balanced. It was like he went against his own norm. And then years later now, as he's getting old, he's like, wait a minute, I have my own voice. I can do whatever I want. And I don't think what my wife thinks. Okay, so, now he's exploring both sides. And so he's become more in the middle and mellow. And I think that that's what we should all seek is we're not right. No person's right. Everybody's a little bit right, a little bit wrong,
Absolutely.
And so go seek more knowledge on your own. And it doesn't matter whether it's AI generated or not. It's all of our responsibilities to find what is the right thing or find the multiple right things, and just don't be so opinionated. Stay in the middle.
Wow, Steve. So yeah, this actually proves that the conversation is not only about technology, it's a lot about spirituality because everything is spiritual. So yeah, thank you so much, Steve. That was actually very insightful. So we are actually at the very, very end part of this entire session. So I will quickly, probably in less than a minute, I will just attend a few comments, and then I will end this session with a question to you, Steve, and a small question to you, Riz. Both the questions will be really small. Before that, let's greet our audiences a bit. We have Zara Islam with us. Thank you so much for being with us, Zara. We have Moshul Azam. Thank you. Shihab Ahmed. Thank you for being there. Mirza Abdul Al Nafiz. Thank you. Shantamuni. Thank you. Raisa Tasnim. Absolutely amazing. She says, you are amazing as well. We will keep coming with episodes. Stay tuned. Laima Islam says very informative. Yes, absolutely, exactly that. That's exactly the thing I was thinking as well. Then Sadia Afrin says branding gurus. Hello to the branding gurus. Okay, so that's about it. Tanzila Akhtar says awesome. Yes, as awesome as you are. And Alamin Chaudhuri says thank you for this great session. Thank you, audiences, for joining this session with us. And before we end this session, we will actually love to know a little bit more about a thing from both of them. And before that, let me tell you something. We already know, and you should know as well, to the audience, as I'm saying, that Steve has written multiple books that are focused on entrepreneurship, where people can learn a lot of things from. And Steve also does speaking engagements on topics like business and education and a lot of things. So, Steve, I would really like to know from you where our audience can connect with you to buy your books or to get your speech or any personal website of yours, anywhere where they can learn from you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the commercial message.
Yeah, you're welcome.
The books that I've written are for children. They're very simple workbooks on how to do entrepreneurship for specific types of industries. So we do have a book that I published on general entrepreneurship. There's one on apppreneurship, on app development. I have several out on creating a lemonade stand. In our country, children often their first business is lemonade stand on a corner. So you can find our books if you go to our nonprofit. Go to ideate.org, and there's a curriculum page there, and these are meant for schools, and they're really easy for teachers to do portions of them. They don't have to do the whole things. That we have a number of different curriculum models out there. All of our books are available on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and search for my name, Steve Sue, they'll pop up, or again through our website at the nonprofit. To learn more about me personally, stevesue.com. I urge all of you to go out and buy your own URL, because there's there's probably 50 Riz's in Dhaka alone. So Riz Rahmans, right? So buy the .com so that nobody else can squat on it. It's $10 a year. Publish your own website. It's going to be a life thing for you. And then when you pass away, it can be your tribute site. So rather than buy a gravestone somewhere, you can put yourself on the internet in perpetuity. So those are the places to find me. But I commend you guys for putting this podcast together. I know it's the very first one, always difficult. I also thank you for including me, because this is something that StreamYard, it's online. I know it's not the same as doing a podcast when you're in studio with two people on mics. It's that's a lot more interactive, and this is a little bit more difficult thing to do. But Nazif, you've done a great job of putting this together. Riz, I'll take time with you any day, anywhere. You know that. So I appreciate you guys, and all you guys that are listening. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so
much, Steve. We are as delighted as we are honored to have you with us. And to the audiences, I'm saying that stevesue.com, visit and buy your own domains. Have your own names digitalized, as Steve just said. So
.com version.
.com version, yes. Top level domain. So the next thing, it's kind of the same thing towards Riz. That Riz, you recently went on a TEDx conference where you had an amazing speech about Web3 and everything. And I have personally seen that in your social media engagements, you try to teach people as much as you can with a lot of technical nuggets, practical advice about life and businesses and everything. And I have seen that people really appreciate these things, and they need these things in their lives actually. So would you please also share places or where people can learn from you, people can get things, the nuggets and everything, or where you want to connect with them with similar sorts of learning materials?
Thank you. So the whole purpose of this show is to spread knowledge. Absolutely. And the insights that we have learned over these years in a hard way. Our journeys have been long and hard. We learned through failures and obstacles. We wanted to share, and we'll be sharing all these stories with all our audiences in this show and all the shows that are to come. Hoping that it will help someone. If it helps at least one person, we are successful. That's the goal. And as for me, I try to help people in the same way. I try to educate people with whatever I have learned over this year. So you can just follow me on LinkedIn, or you can follow our company's website or social media pages. We keep posting news and updates over there. We have a really good blog section as well. So yeah, we'll keep doing what we are doing. You are muted, Irat.
I'm extremely sorry. With all your permission, I want to end this session. Thank you so much, Riz. Thank you so much, Steve, for being with us for this long. Your precious time is spent perfectly, I guess. I believe the audience will be as much helped as you just did right now with sharing all the knowledges and everything that you talked about. And we will be sharing this podcast session, the recorded version, with everyone. And thank you guys for being with us. We will very soon come again with another episode of The Sprint. Stay tuned for that. And we will be sharing this podcast, this episode, on different channels that we actually cater to. So see you all again. Thank you so much, everyone. Till then, bye. Ending this broadcast.
Thank you. Bye.